Hello and welcome to another thrilling podcast from Shane O'Connor and Adrian Lacey. It's the Comedy Slab. It's the podcast where every week we choose a comedy to whack onto the slab to decide whether we like it or not, to give it a few points or stars along the way, depending on which way you want to go with that one. And
Can
then
I
we
just check? Sorry to interrupt. When you said thrilling, I know it's a delayed reaction, but I am very tired. It sounded to me like it was in sarcastic quotes. Can we just clarify?
Let me just check the script. Hang on.
Is this or is this not thrilling?
It's yeah, it does say actually in the direction. It says say in a sarcastic manner.
Sarcastic. So I'm tired and you're drunk. Well, we're both on top form.
Oh dear, what a way to do a podcast. I mean, you're under immense pressure.
Yes,
it
well,
has to be
working
said.
with you, love. Yes, in the process of moving and splitting up, which are along with I just need a baby and a bereavement, and I'll have the full set.
Yeah,
The most stressful life events.
and you forgot to mention your boiler as well. That's a pretty big one, isn't it?
Yeah, that begins with B as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, 5 stressful life events.
Do you know what? Talking about boilers, we had a problem when my son was born. As these things happen, he was like about 4 weeks old. He got a 4-week-old baby in the house, and the boiler packs up. You think, oh, great, this is exactly what we need.
Yes.
And I got a heating engineer out, and he charged me 140 quid to change what I later found out was a £14 part. So the next time it happened, I fixed it myself. I went to Screwfix, loving your work, Screwfix. If you want to sponsor this podcast,
Feel free.
We'd certainly like to talk, and we'd rip your arm off and beat you with the soggy end. But I went straight to Screw, and I got the valve that I needed and fixed it myself. I thought, there's no, never, and I try and fix it myself now. So
Yeah, but if I tried that, it would end up with a £1,000 bill, and wouldn't be very funny.
yeah, it's all right if it works, isn't it? I suppose from a position of hindsight, it's easy to say that. I don't know. Anyway, sorry, this isn't the Plumbing Weekly podcast. That's coming.
Although, in saying that, if Screwfix sponsor it,
Yeah, I'd do it, wouldn't you?
I would, for a very modest fee.
Yeah,
Unlike your plumber.
as long as they it's in cash, I don't mind. Anyway, if you haven't got the grip of what we do on the podcast,
Neither have we.
neither are we. So you're in really good company. If you've not been through our back catalogue,
Why does it sound so rude coming from you?
I don't know.
Oh, get your back catalogue, missus.
If you haven't been through our back catalogue, then more fool you. I think it sounds a bit like going down your back passage, doesn't it?
No, you didn't have to spell it out.
No.
But is it double S? Or?
I was just thinking out loud. That's what that was. I forgot what I was saying now. What we were saying?
I think it's probably best that you and indeed the listener forget what you were saying.
Okay.
But it's something like we should explain. We're putting a comedy as we do each week on the slab.
Yeah.
Dissecting it.
Yeah.
See who salutes
Yeah.
and giving it marks out of 5. No, don't say yes. I know you know.
Yeah.
I'm telling them.
It was an encouraging yes. It was. I was trying to encourage. I was going yes, yes.
I
yes.
felt it went carsastic again. But
I was going to go
what do I
yes, yes, yes. I'll have
it.
what he's having. That kind of thing. It was that kind of yes.
Okay, we're going to say what show we're dissecting if they haven't read the blurb.
Yeah. Do you know what this was? When we first floated the idea of doing this as a podcast and talking about comedy, which is something that we both love, isn't it? I mean, I always think you're more fortunate than I am because of your famous cousin Ron, second cousin Ron, and the fact that you've worked in TV and you've worked on TV comedies and you've seen it from. Although I don't know because I remember the first time that I saw radio. And I never heard it the same again. It does kind of ruin it in one sort of way. But
hang on, were you on drugs then? You saw radio, but you never heard it the same again.
Yeah, I went into a studio and I saw the famous one for me was I worked at Pebble Mill, and my sister-in-law was a big Archers fan, and if she still is, but was. And one Christmas I bought her a book and I took it down to the Archers studios at Pebble Mill. to get it signed, would see if they'd sign it, and they went, "Oh yeah, no problem, coming in." And I went in and watched them record an episode, and it was just that's all I can see now is that.
Did it ruin it for you?
Yeah, walking in trays of gravel, and
well, it's worse than that. I was going to say my mate Carl, who did some of the sound effects on the Archers, explained how they made the sound of a little baby lamb being born. I don't really want to spell it out, but let's just say natural yogurt's never been the same since.
Oh, right. The weird thing about working at Pebble Mill was that at the time, and he went on to greater things before he got the sack, I think, was their producer, or their editor rather, was Sean O'Connor.
Did you get some of his emails?
I got all his posts. I used to get his posts.
Oh, brilliant!
And I can't tell you
know
what
too much.
I can't tell you what the podcast is and what I used to get, but it was an eye opener. And there was a bloke in my dad's village. He's moved now. Who wouldn't believe my dad that it wasn't me that was the editor of the Archers. And he always used to say to my dad, he'd stop my dad and go, "How's your son?" And he'd go, "He's all right." And he'd say, "Is he still working in the Archers?" I think in the end, my dad just went, "Yeah."
It's easier, isn't it? It's lower maintenance.
Yeah, it's just easier, isn't it? Really, it's that whole kind of. It reminds me of that Steve Coogan thing in one of the episodes of Coogan's Run, where an old granny comes out and he said, "Stay in the car," and she went, "Will it explode?" And he went, and he like looks as though he's going to explain, and he went, "Yeah," because it's just easier, isn't it, to just say yes. All bar Luke. It's one that I've wanted to do because I think it's really clever. I think it's really different. It's really clever. And it's also by one of the guys that is fast becoming a favourite comedian of mine, a guy called Tim Key, who also writes poetry as well. He's been in things like, he's worked with Steve Coogan. I think he was in Saxondale. In fact, he was Sidekick Simon. I think a lot of people would know him as Sidekick Simon in the North Norfolk Digital Alan Partridge days. He was in the movie as well, Tim Key was.
Well, Alpha Papa.
Alpha Papa, yeah. But yeah, so it's a one-hander. Would you say one-hander or a monologue? I'd say one-hander really, because it's a kind of play, isn't it, in a way?
Well, we're hearing one side of his conversations, aren't we?
Yeah, which when I would say, I remember, I told you last week, I remember when I first heard it, I got into the car and it was like halfway through an episode and I thought, is there something wrong with my radio? Or what?
Half the stereo's missing.
Yeah, because I could only hear sort of one side of it. But I just thought it was such a clever concept. Should we have a listen first and give people a flavour of what it's all about and what it sounds like?
Sure. Can I just say, just before we do that when you said he's a comedian that's fast becoming one of your favourites, do I at this stage point out that he won a Perrier in 2001, which would make it 17 years for you to react?
No.
Is that fast?
No, but it's taken me 17 years for him to become one of my favourites.
Oh, right, okay. No.
He's certainly been up there in the people that I like very much, but wasn't one of my favourites.
I'm only teasing.
No, I know.
But yes, let's hear the clip. Do you want to set it up as only you can?
Yeah, well, Luke Walsall is his name, the character that Tim Key plays, and he is. Well, it's described in the blurb about the series as he missed the education boat. He never got out of Cheveley, and he spends his weekends as a hapless designated driver for his ungrateful friends. He's what my mum used to call put upon on a regular basis by his so-called friends, and we're not really sure that they are his friends. But I think this kind of gives you an idea of how Luke is trying to fit in with his friends, how he's trying to become one of the gang of people that he kind of goes around with, and that he acts as their sort of impromptu taxi driver and gopher and provides money for them as well. And this is him in a bar where anybody else, if you just got a round of drinks in, you probably wouldn't, as Luke does, put your credit card behind the bar. But in this particular case, he does. And this is him buying a round of drinks for all his, as I say, so-called friends.
And then we've got Bates, your aftershock. Yeah, exactly. Well, hey! Way! Dave, an aftershock. Way! Macca, an aftershock. Yeah, way! And Lee, an aftershock. Way! And I got my Coke. Let's neck this lot quite quickly because some of us have got to work tomorrow morning, so get this down, you Lee. It's a top rack. It's got Malibu, vodka, whiskey, about 3 kinds of whiskey. Lester just basically put in a bit of everything on the top shelf. Martini, gin, I lost count, so it's going to basically kill you. Happy birthday, Lee! Bawdy-wise, I just saw your sister, Dave, and her mate, Amanda. She, exactly, you read my mind, gigantic, like, they're like melons, that's nice one. But yeah, I prefer Hayley, but... No, I mean, no, not like that, Dave. I'm just... No, don't give me a dead arm, because, no, if people hit people every time they disagreed, then more or less everyone would have a dead arm or else be winded and nothing would ever get done. So
my school was even rougher than the one he must have gone to because we had dead legs, not dead arms. Dead arms seem sophisticated and incredibly cool by comparison. But, dare I ask the question that's a recurring one on the Comedy Slab, which is, well, the one I had to ask myself is it comedy? I just find this so close to pain, and I understand that most theories of comedy, factor in pain and tragedy.
Yeah.
But this, maybe it's what I'm going through at the moment, but it didn't seem like the kind of escapist, fantastical entertainment that would probably be a bit more life-affirming for me currently. Which is not to say it's not good. It's
really weird coming back to it after all this time and listening to it again, because it was first broadcast in 2006. This particular series started in 2006 on Radio 4, and I didn't realise it was so long ago. But coming back to it now and not really having listened to it in any great depth since, I'm with you on that one. There's a lot of pain. There's not a lot of relief, is there, in the whole thing? And it could be. I can understand why it could be a difficult listen. It sent my mind racing. Did you get that as well? As to what his motivation? Why would you do that? Why?
You mean the character? I'm also thinking, why would Tim Key invest so much in this, loser, essentially? Did you find any answers to your question about the character's motivations?
No, because it's really odd is that there's an element that he finds himself in the same situations over and over again. Did you find, because we listened to 2 episodes, because they're only 15 minutes long.
Yeah, it was good that we did that. Apart from anything else, I got more of a sense of the shape of the show and, to use that posh term, the narrative arc, and find that episode 2 was a continuation of episode 1. So I'm really glad I heard 2 of them. But if I can attempt an answer to your question to yourself as to what the character's motivation was, why would he do that, as you say? To me, I've just written 3 words: desperate to belong. Mm. That's the story of this tragic character, I think.
Yeah.
Belong at all costs.
And then, as you say, then the next question is that funny? Is that... Now, although having said that, there were some great lines in there, weren't there? There were some great comedic lines in there from time to time, but there were few and far between amongst the misery and the pain that this guy is feeling, that he's, as you say, he's trying to fit in. The reason why he would invest, like why Tim Key would invest so much time in this character that you were asking, I just did a sort of little bit of light digging on the internet, and this character Luke is set in Cheveley, isn't he? Which I had to look up, and I think it's in Cambridgeshire, isn't it, Cheveley?
Well, I looked up because I'm a postcode nerd. I once did a job where I did nothing other than look up postcodes.
Really?
It was in the days before Tinternet. This was for the uncivil service. Right. At what we rather ironically called the Department of Enjoyment in Watford, which was actually the Department of Employment.
Right.
Well, it kept me employed and quite a few people.
Yeah.
But, I mean, yeah, I really should write a very dark sitcom about that as well. I mean, it doesn't give you an awful lot of meaning to your life to spend a whole day looking up postcodes.
Why were you doing it? What was the end result of looking up postcodes?
Just to stop me making any mischief, I think. No, it was we were working on the employment census. Again, it might have been called the employment senseless because I couldn't see a great purpose to that either. But you're not meant to say that. But this is some years ago. And I should remember from that what CB was. It's CB8, he said, but I had to look it up on Tinternet and it comes up as Newmarket. But obviously you're obviously more geolocated than I am.
Well,
and
the only reason is that because my brother used to live in Cambridge for a while. And I looked up to see where Tim Key was born. And he was born in Histon.
Is that close by to? Just
outside Cambridge. In fact, where my brother used to live, if he had to go down the council tip, as it were, I didn't think they'd have such things as filthy council tips in Cambridgeshire, to be honest with you.
No.
But his local council tip was at Histon, funnily enough, which is how I knew it. So I thought, I'm there, but I might be putting two and two together and coming up with six, I don't know, but it's not a huge leap of faith to say that this is probably, if not semi-autobiographical, certainly has elements of somebody that maybe he knew at school.
Yeah, well, it's the classic thing, the old saying, write what you know, isn't it? Which I always thought, and no disrespect to Tim Key, because I've subsequently seen the truth of it, but I always thought that was a slightly lazy approach to things, because if you write what you don't know, that might be more interesting and fresh, and yes, you have to do extra research. But having done some of my own writing, I think, actually, that's not such a bad bit of advice. But I'm being slightly tongue-in-cheek. I mean, because you can easily get found out. The life you live is the one you know best, clearly.
Yeah. Although they did say to you, write what you know, and then you wrote your postcode, which it wasn't great to read, was it? Let's be honest.
WD1 4AB.
Yeah, and it was kind of like, that was it. It was, once it was out there, it was...
I'll put that in the public domain, but I don't live there now, and it's not even the place I'm moving from or to, so don't bother going round there.
Talking about literary references, I heard somebody say the other day about this guy that was in prison, and he was trying to better himself, and he kept saying to the warder, he said, "Can you get me a book?" And he went, "Oh, all right, I'll get you a book." So he got him a book, and then, like a day later, he said, "I've read that one. Can you get me another one?" And this went on for about a week, and he thought, I'm just sick of this bloke. I'm really sick of it. So, all right, I'll sort him out. I'll cook his goose. So he said, "Can I have a book tomorrow?" He said, "I'll get you a book, yeah." And he gave him the telephone directory. And the next day, he said, "How'd you get on with that book I got you?" And he said, "Well," he said, "it's not got much of a plot, but it's got a hell of a cast."
For a moment, I thought that was going to be that awful joke about the seagull going to the library for the frog. Do you know that one?
No.
Where it goes to the library again and again and again. And the librarian thinks, I keep seeing this seagull taking book after book after book. He goes away, comes back, goes away, comes back. What's going on? And eventually the librarian must have run to keep up with the seagull to find that he was going back and taking the book to this frog. And every time the frog opened the book, he said, "Read it." Read it. I thought you'd know that, but even if you didn't.
We'd like you say, we went to different schools.
Obviously very classy.
So what do you think of my theory then? Do you think, is there a possibility that Tim Key, this could be Tim Key? I don't know. I mean...
It's either, I would say, a strong possibility of him or his group, or someone in his group. Yeah.
Somebody he knew, wasn't it? Certainly somebody.
Yeah, but why would you need to get it out of your system? And why, as a comedian, would you want something so skewed towards tragedy? Shall I tell you what it reminds me of just before clip number 2 of 3 we must get to? Do you know Rob Brydon in Marion and Jeff?
Marion and Jeff, yeah.
It's the same sort of... You know, he's the fall guy to them, isn't he? He ends up driving them to the theatre as a free cab ride.
Yeah, yeah. Although there are more laughs in that, aren't there? There are more gags. There are more. I mean, that actually makes you laugh more than it upsets you, I think. And I think the balance is slightly different with this.
Right.
Do you think? I don't know. I mean,
the truth is, I haven't seen the Marion Jeff show for ages. I know. I mean, Rob Brydon, great comedy actor, and but I found that quite close to pain. But anyway,
as a character, though, how did you get on with that? I mean, I thought the nuances of the character is beautifully painted. Like, he's got a slight stutter in the way that he speaks. His lack of confidence. He comes across as very, very fragile. And as you said, he's everything he does screams, "Let me be part of the group. Let me fit in." It's that kind of that is beautifully observed, isn't it? I mean, it's really.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
You don't think, oh, that's far-fetched. He wouldn't do that as a character. You were saying about why would it be so dark? Have you heard any of his poetry?
Yes, I heard his probably in the same slot, because this, of course, the show we're talking about was on BBC Radio 4. It's a BBC production. Let me mention the wonderful Seb Barwell, producer, who's brought all of this to life. It was that, what was it, Late Night Poetry? Was that the title of the show? Did you hear that? That's with your mate, Mr. Basden.
That's it, with Tom Basden, wasn't it? Isn't it Tim Key's
late night radio program?
Show.
Late Night Poetry? Yeah.
Something
like
late poetry show or something.
I did have it. I can't find the screen right now. But, of course, his website, where you can find the audio we're talking about, all bar Luke, is timkey.co.uk.
But my point being that his poetry is quite dark. I mean, he does tend to write stuff that he's pretty well, not, it's not grim, but it's on the darker side of life, I would say. It's not happy go lucky laugh a minute poetry. I was just watching one the other day. There was one on YouTube, and it's all about this guy who is waiting under a station clock for this woman who never turns up, and he ends up dying there, and and then the woman turns up. I'm not meant
to laugh at that point, am I?
He said the following August the woman turned up with her husband, and she said, it's all been very busy and I never really got around. So he's got this kind of almost macabre sort of side to the writing that he does, which I kind of think filters through into this, really.
I wouldn't feel the need for the word almost in front of macabre myself, but I mean, there's definitely great artistry to it, great performance skill. As you say, there's this kind of nervous tick of the almost Woody Allen-esque sort of stutter through the nervousness.
And the laugh as well. I forgot that he's got that kind of nervous laugh, hasn't he, that he does as well.
Laugh, yeah. I wish I could say I had no idea what any of that felt like. And I'm always in the bosom of the crowd, warmly accepted. But hey, moving on to clip number 2. Now, we should say that, I mean, a major plot point of, well, the entire fulcrum, if I can I say fulcrum? I got away with Frackart last week.
You can say that, yeah. Apparently.
Okay. I think his brother is essentially the fulcrum. And his brother, again, it's macabre. But his brother, he gets his brother drunk on his birthday, doesn't he? And he's underage, which is why he gets very nervous about taking him to the hospital. Feels he can't do that.
I think doesn't his brother always kind of pass out wherever for one reason or another.
I don't know enough of this recurring character.
I just picked it up off the 2 episodes, because it was the first episode he passed out because he'd had egg, hadn't he, or something, and then the second one, he said because you'd given him bitter, he said you should know not to give him bitter, he'll pass. It's like if he goes out for a drink, if he has a drink, he actually passes out, and that's the impression I got. I don't know, I'd have to listen to the rest of it as well.
Actually, what it could be is what Stephen Fry, bless him, describes himself as, which I think you and I can probably identify with to an extent, maybe to a large extent. Stephen Fry describes himself as practically allergic to alcohol, and maybe he doesn't realise it's the recurring theme. It's not the advocaat or then the bitter; it's the alcohol in both drinks.
Yes, yeah.
But the egg doesn't help, I'm sure.
No.
Anyway, so Lee, his brother, finds himself slumped, and here we find him. I might need a little prompt here, Shane, but essentially he's trying to keep him alive, isn't he?
Yeah, I think that's pretty accurate. Yet again, he's looking after him, isn't he?
Yeah.
All right, Lee. It's almost over, mate. Let's go. Oh. Right, good. Just to let you know what's happened. I've been clamped, and I'm now taking a little bit of 30 quid out of your sort of money pouch, and you're a bit sort of mangled because Lester accidentally fed you egg in the form of avocado. I'm just going to put you down for literally a second. Hey, Hayley. Yeah? Oh, don't worry about that. Men get slapped 2 or 3 times a year. That's just... It's not very nice, but it's statistics. Not your fault. Yeah, I am. I'm doing 10 till 5 tomorrow. Well, look, I mean, come in and I'll... wait till Lester's having a fag and then I can give you a Bacardi Breezer without you paying. Yeah, just... Well, then at lunchtime, or else if you've got a free period, just... Yeah. See you tomorrow.
This to me as well, it illustrates the caring side of the character. Cause
it's there somewhere, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I think he is a really kind of gentle, caring person underneath it all. And there's moments of tenderness, particularly with his brother as well. What I do love about his interactions around his brother is that he keeps asking people, what texture is he? He keeps
his
asking
skin's
them,
obviously gone.
What texture is he? And
at one point, doesn't he say he's got loads of holes in his skin as a reaction to the drink?
It's just... I've never heard anybody say... So can you tell me what texture is he? And there's a wonderful point in the second episode that we listened to, and he said he was talking about Lee to somebody, and he said, "No, look at him, he's fine." He said he's a normal colour, light grey. I just thought it's just beautiful, and then, to me, those are those throwaway comedy moments. But I was going to say that's my thing now. What texture is he? I've never heard anybody say that. What texture? Can you tell me what texture he is?
If I ask you what texture is your wife, I'll probably get a slap, or at least at some distance.
Yeah, if you're trying to find out what texture is for yourself, then that's going too far.
Well,
isn't it?
I think I would have crossed the line.
Yeah,
that's where it all went wrong before. But let's not dig over old wounds.
You start judging the other characters. Did you do that as well? You start kind of thinking, it's Hayley's brother. Is it? I can't remember his name. Is it Dave? I think.
Possibly. Sorry, I'm not as researched as I normally try to be. But
it's the guy who hit him anyway, and it is Dave.
And that's because, was that to do with who let the dogs out, or have I confused two plots?
No, that's the same one. But Dave, he's got the hots for Hayley, hasn't he? This is he thinks she's smashing Hayley.
Smashing.
And
wearing a smashing smock, as Rick Mail would have said in Bottom.
Smashing blouses on. And he really likes, but Hayley, and that's in the first episode. I don't think it was very clear, actually, but it becomes more clear as time goes on, is that he was talking to Dave about Hayley, and that's actually why the first clip that we heard, that's why Dave gave him a dead arm, because he'd said that about Hayley. And he was like, it's about my sister, and he was,
you're having a pop, mate.
Yeah, that kind of thing. And of course, all this is what we're imagining Dave says to him, because we never hear it, do you? So
it's the genius of it. Obviously, heavily influenced by Joyce Grenfell.
yes. Timothy, leave Jakarta alone. But yeah, it's. It is clever in the way that the whole thing comes together, and that you, as I say, we've obviously formed the same impression of what was being said on the other half, and I think that's the test of it, isn't it? Really, if we both
that's the genius of it, yeah.
If we both feel the same and think, actually, they would have said that to make him do this, then it kind of works. Very short scenes. Did you notice?
Yeah, and I was trying to multitask, which, of course, as a bloke is impossible, and I can barely unitask at the moment. But yes, actually what it needed was full 150% concentration, sitting down for every word to really savour it, because it does bear that kind of close inspection, but it also, it rewards that concentration.
What about the short episodes? The idea, when it was broadcast, it went out, I think they're about 13.5 minutes, the episodes, which is really unusual, isn't it?
Yes, well, I think this would be the less mainstream slot, sounding like a complete Radio 4 anorak, but I am at least a partial one. I think this is the Wednesday night slot, which I also heard the poetry in. I mean, the clue is in the title, Late Night Poetry or whatever it was.
Right.
I'm guessing it must have been in that slot, because the 6:30 slot is much more mostly family friendly, much more mainstream, much bigger laughs, usually with an audience. It's actually in the spec, if you are as nerdy as I am and have to get involved in pitching ideas and so on. It's in the spec, or certainly, I don't know if they still write it in, but from the number of shows with an audience, studio audience, it actually says these shows, it's highly audience coming home from work need the sound of a live audience. That might not be in every spec now, because we've talked in previous comedy slabs about the fashion changing over having a laughter track and so on. But
what was the idea behind that? Sorry, do you know what was the rationale behind an audience coming home needs to hear a studio audience?
Comedians have got a phrase, I don't know if you probably have heard it, laughing the gag home, which, again, these things go in waves, and a more sort of trendier, cutting-edge style probably doesn't do that. But if a comedian thinks a joke with an audience, whether it's on the radio or live in front of them in a comedy club or something, isn't quite landing properly, they'll go, and that helps it along. It literally helps the audience laugh. So that's laughing the gag home. And I guess you're literally laughing the gag home if you're driving home. I can only surmise that what they're thinking is it just gives the listener a lift, it helps it along, and they might laugh along as a result. Whereas there's always that question, particularly if you're, again, you're multitasking, if you're driving and listening to a radio show, obviously easier for women, but for those who aren't quite sure, was that a gag? Was that meant to be funny? By the time you've thought that, they're on to the next line. But if an audience is there, that helps you along, and also it's a breathing space for the artists and the timing and so on. That's my theory.
And I'm trying to visualize this as I'm saying this. So just as a thought, then, would this have withstood a laughter, either a laughter track or being performed in front of a live audience? Because I'm thinking of something like Count Arthur Strong. Actually, sorry, my TV just switched itself on spontaneously.
I thought you were being heckled. Well, you are by your own TV.
My own TV is heckling me with a toothpaste advert.
Must be a sign.
Yeah,
you haven't got fresh breath. I nearly said fresh breath.
I've got to go to the dentist Wednesday. Maybe that's what it is. Who knows? Count Arthur Strong is performed in front of a studio audience, isn't it? And I just wonder whether do you think this is too dark to do that? Yeah,
well, certainly. You asked two questions: could it do with with a laughter track? Would it survive? And secondly, would it survive in front of a live audience? I think yes, probably to the latter one. Although it might be a little awkward and certainly not raucous laughter wall to wall. But I think on the radio, I think there would be too many moments where there just wasn't a laugh. There'd be other devices he could have in real time in front of an audience who could see him and so on.
Right.
That's only a kind of gut feeling. Or what do you think in answer to your own questions?
I don't. I was just thinking back to Sarah Kendall that we Australian.
You're in love with her, aren't you? Big time.
I'm what? Sorry.
You're in love with her.
I thought she was it was really clever. I thought it was really. She's just a really brilliant storyteller. But I thought the reverse with her. I wonder if she could have done that, but not in front of a studio audience. Whether I'm always so I don't really. People go, right. I never watch American programs because of the laughter track, and I hate it. Whatever. I'm never. I mean, I'm probably fortunate, maybe, I don't know, but I can always phase that out in my own mind. If I don't want to hear it, I don't hear it. It doesn't bother me.
Right.
I don't need it as a cue to make me laugh. So if it's not there, it's kind of a refreshing change. But I always think, okay, if it's on there, could it do without it? And if it isn't on there, could it do with one? Because you're right. I mean, there are programs, there are comedy programs that it's part of it. Like we were talking about Only Fools and Horses last week. You know, you couldn't watch Only Fools and Horses without that being performed in front of a studio audience, because that you know, although they don't play, they never break the fourth wall and they don't play to that.
Yeah.
It is an integral part of the thing, isn't it? That people are, you know, are wetting themselves laughing at it.
Oh, well, imagine, I just had a flashback. You see, I never saw many Fools and Horses. I seem to be the last person in Britain not to have watched more episodes. But imagine the David Jason character. That's Rod? No, that's Del Boy. Del Boy. Forget, that's how ignorant I am of it. But hey, it must be me. It's not you. It's me.
What's my phrase that I always say? Everybody can't like everything.
No, but I do want to belong with this one. I've got the same problem as our
Luke.
Character Luke. Yeah. Anyway, but just imagine David Jason falling through the bar, which I don't find particularly funny. That's another reason. Slapstick sometimes works. But imagine that without a laughter track, though.
Yeah.
That would just die, I think.
Oh, that is one of my favourite bits of physical comedy ever, I think.
I knew you'd say that just to upset me.
I don't know, I love that.
Okay. But anyway, do you get my point about that with utter silence?
Yeah.
That would be dead.
It wouldn't work at all, would it, really? And I suppose it's in the tradition of theatre, isn't it? Is that, you know, that if you go back far enough in theatre, that the audience got involved. You know.
Oh, gosh, yeah. The Globe.
Yeah.
And the so-called penny stinkards, otherwise known as the groundlings.
Yeah.
People would shout back at the actors, wouldn't they?
Oh, yeah, shout and heckle and throw things at them. And, yeah, I mean, it was like panto on acid, wasn't it, really? You know, it's like kind of chucking a few spoiled sweets about, mate. You're a lightweight, what's the matter with you? I brought an awesome cart here I'm going to throw on the stage later.
Yes, and let's just remind ourselves they had no toilets in the Globe Theatre, so you can imagine some of the things they might have thrown on stage.
Yeah.
A bit like going to Iggy Pop, as I did once, and interesting stuff being thrown there.
Really?
Yeah. Don't start me on that. I got really upset on behalf of this woman a few rows ahead of me. We were quite close to the stage. This is Clapham Common years ago. Huh. She got hit by a bottle, which some idiot, that's a polite term, of course, was aiming for the stage. So you pay money to see your favourite artist, and you go to throw a bottle at them, and you're such a loser. As well as aiming for the stage, you fail to, and you hit a member of the crowd. And eventually, she and her partner just turned on their heels and left the gig.
Dreadful.
What is the point? Yeah.
I thought you meant they were throwing poo at Iggy Pop then. I was going to say, is that why he never wears a shirt? There's no point.
It saves on laundry. No, I think it was the liquid variety, number one, numero uno.
Oh, man.
But anyway, can we move swiftly on to clip number 3? So actually, it's not going to help because I won't be able to look at Orangina in the eye again after this clip.
We're talking about clip number 3, but I'll still be thinking about number 1s now. So yeah, do you want me
3
to
is 1 plus 2, isn't it? Which is where could you do it? I think I'm going to have to go to the loo, or as you call it, go for an ad break.
Okay. We catch up with Luke at the end of the evening. The police have been called. It's not gone particularly well. I think that's generally from what I can gather about how most evenings, in the same way that Lee always ends up ill and drunk. I think it always ends up in a bit of catastrophe. There's been a bit of a scuffle, and I think Dave's had a smack because, as you alluded to a little bit earlier, Adrian, they were all singing "Who Let the Dogs Out" because. What did he describe? It's a theme tune that we sing to ugly girls or something.
Well, he was trying to explain to Mehmet at the Turkish kebab shop that it's a British cultural tradition.
Cultural tradition.
We're so proud of our traditions in this nation.
Yeah, it was like it was some kind of folk dancing or something of that nature. It was lovely description. But yeah, so this is the time when they're all going home and they're just trying to sort everything out.
All right, mate. Lee. So what it is, I think I'm going to have to take Hayley and Amanda home because they're wet. So, I don't know, I'm thinking you may have to get a cab because, are you still awake? Because there's not room because the back seat's full of Mum's exercise bike. I'll just see if I can get the paramedic to have a quick look at you. Excuse me, mate. Sorry to talk to you. When you finish checking his head, can you just have a quick look at my brother? I'm worried. I mean, the whole texture of his face is... Sure, well, of course, deal with him first. He's got quite a lot of blood and orangina in his hair.
That's a lovely thought, isn't it? Blood and orangina. Maybe it's a blood orange. I'm not sure, but what a combination. And was it in episode 1? There's a reference to someone getting their hair wax, or was it his brother Lee? He's worried about it's the wax sort of dripping down his face.
I thought that was a really tender moment. Again, I thought like it was kind of really tender brotherly moment where he said, something about the rain's dripping down your hair, waxing in your face or something, isn't it? It just paints these wonderful pictures, but it's quite relentless, isn't it, in a way, don't you think?
It is, yeah. It's all cloud and no blue sky, I would say, pretty much. But yeah, very clever for that. I think I might be coming round to an answer to our sort of set-up question about why would he want to do that. If it's either a version of him or a little bit him or one of his crowd originally, Tim Key, that is, growing up, if it's at least partially autobiographical, it's this classic thing, isn't it, of a comedian turning round. Well, normally you say you turn round pain and convert it into laughter. I'm not sure it's finished the conversion process, but there must be some therapy for him as well. He wants to make a living, he wants to create. But to go down this route, I mean, I think there must be some catharsis in it for him.
I'm trying to figure out what kind of guy he is because, just from obviously what's presented on the internet or in programs or whatever. And interestingly enough, he was a member of Footlights, but he never went to Cambridge.
Oh.
And I thought...
Was that just because he lived nearby?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I don't know how that works. I don't know whether you could... I thought you had to be... at Cambridge University in order to be a member of Footlights, but you obviously don't.
It might be a measure of how skilled he was. He might be the only person who's allowed to be an exception.
Yeah, I don't know. And so you kind of then think, is this somebody that he knows rather than something close on? But I still think there is a personal connection there. I still think there's something. It's something that he's seen or experienced in his life that has made him think, this guy is he's just been used all the while. The interesting thing is, I mean, even to the point where his car gets clamped and his first reaction is, but this is by his boss, isn't it? He works for this guy in the pub, and he parks in a space, so he's clamped his car that his boss has just so he can extort the money off him. And his first reaction is not, oh, well, my car, what have you done? You've clamped my car. No, you can't do that because I've got to give these people a lift home.
Yeah. And again, that's bittersweet, isn't it?
Yeah, he's just like so conditioned to kind of, But the interesting thing, and I love the way Tim Key does this in his writing, is that he feeds little bits of information in. You think, okay, so how does that change something? And at one point, he's talking to a police officer in the second episode, and he said something about, do you know? Yeah, I know these people. He said they were all 3 years below me at school.
Well, that's another clue, isn't it? 3 years below.
So they're not even, on a par with him age-wise in that, or he's not trying to hang around with an older gang. These are all younger people and I just love the way that he does that. He does some really clever stuff.
Yeah.
The way that he tells the story and gets around the fact that you can only hear one side of the conversation. When he's getting the kebabs, I don't know if you picked up on that one as well. He said something about, no, I never agreed to that. I think he's talking to Mehmet, and he said, no, I never agreed to that. And then he goes, Dave, did I agree to get everyone a kebab? And so he's told you what he did, but just by... It's so...
Yeah. Brilliant.
I thought it was so clever. I still do. I still think it's really clever. But I think I think you've got the nail on the head. It is can be quite a tough listen.
Yeah. I think, once I got the move out of the way and my heart rate comes down into, I was going to say single figures, that wouldn't be healthy, but out of 3 figures perhaps in the rest state. It's like my friend said to me, you're stressed when you wake up screaming and you realise you weren't asleep. That's how I feel moving house. But anyway.
It is horrible, isn't it? It's horrible. The one thing I'm going to ask you before we move on is, because I thought of you when I was listening to it on headphones, and I thought, oh no, what's he going to make of this? What did you think of the use of audio as a background track?
You mean the effects and occasional?
Yeah, the kind of atmos and stuff that they... Yeah.
Well, I was going to say, I thought Seb Barwell did a very good job. I thought for a moment you were going to push me on how did I feel about two-tone sirens in 2007. Well, I was going to get on my high horse, but then I thought, no, you've got to you pick your battles, don't you? Especially when you're under the cosh.
Look,
why? It sounds like it's a leading question. Was I meant to not be as happy as I was?
No, I didn't know. I thought you might think it wasn't well done or well executed, or it's just that whole thing of if you went into a kebab shop and recorded it, it would sound different from if you put a backing track on, wouldn't it? It just would.
Yes, but equally, with all due respect, and in no way being patronising, you know me, if you went into a kebab shop and a guy was talking and you could only hear his end of the conversation, you'd think, hang on, I've gone through the fourth wall here, or I've just had one too many Oranginas. Yeah,
true. Yeah, I suppose. Yeah. Honourable mention for Seb as well, Seb Barwell. You mentioned who
producer. Yeah,
I did look up actually, and
of course you did, darling.
You
do every week. You show me up every week, just when I think I've got a level of detail.
Yeah. I just go off on more random tangents than you do, and I thought, you're quite random, so
you go on tangent randoms. You do.
I thought that was a 2-seater bicycle.
It may well be
tangent random
made for 3.
Have you brought your tangent random with you? What was I going to say? Oh yeah, Seb. He's worked on Cowards with Tim Key, which was a kind of off the wall sketch show, and I think I'm right in saying. I'm going to have to take a run up at this one. I think I'm right in saying I can never get this name right. Stethoscope.
Flats.
Yeah. Stathlets Flats. Why do I have so much trouble saying that? I can't believe
Remind me why you didn't pass the audition to be a TV announcer.
I've no idea. But yeah, he was actually the producer on that as well, Stathlets Flats.
I think you should call it SLF, but then certain people will think we're talking about... what's the group?
KLF.
No,
KLM.
well, there is an S... Oh, no, there's a punk band.
SOS.
No, it is SLF. Stiff Little Fingers.
Oh, Stiff Little Fingers, yeah. Oh, that's taking me back.
Show me age, yes.
Right. Now on Channel 4, lovely comedy programme. Everybody loves Raymond.
Actually, you wouldn't have that problem on Channel 4, because thinking about it, they were so cool. They were the first TV channel not to have the announcer name the show, because, hey, that's too obvious, isn't it, for an announcer to do?
Right. I noticed that they've started getting all cosmopolitan, and they've got a guy from the West Midlands doing some announcing there.
No.
I know. I thought
it's a race to the bottom, isn't it?
I could have done that.
You could have done that, mate.
But
he's doing better than me.
Actually, it's really black country, so So I'm too posh for that, I think. Really. Never
Is it Solihull or Solihull?
It's Solihull. Anyway, it's time to get our stars out, isn't it?
Oh, yes. Should I put my neck on the block here?
It's about time you went first, because you never do.
Unusually, I think, what are we up to? Episode 17, is this?
This is 17, well done.
Yeah, and it's probably the first one where I've actually thought, before we've come to the recording, I must think what star rating I want to give it. But there is a rider. It's because of extenuating circumstances that I think I'm probably not marking it as highly as I would if, less was going on off stage, as it were. I will give it 3 stars. But I think I probably should, when everything calms down, I might be more at the 3.5 to 4 end of the market. But I'm going to go for 3 today. And you never knowingly overmark, do you, you rotter?
Not if I can help it, no. I funnily enough, I would give it 3.5.
All right. Well, that's generous for you.
Yeah, and the reason, do you know what? I'd like to give it a 4, but the reason that I don't is because... It's more dark than light. I think that was which I think you identified beautifully. I think it's just that's not let it down, but that's the animal that it is, and I accept that. But yeah, 3.5 rather than 4, but still a good. 6.5 is a good, respectable, solid score for All Bar Luke. Tim Key, as you rightly say, you can't buy this. Sadly,
we'll have no money.
And I think they're missing a trick there, aren't they, surely? Because, there's got to be a market for it on iTunes or something. You would think somebody would have whacked it up somewhere.
Because if there wasn't a market for misery, how would the Smiths and Morrissey have had a career?
Exactly. Did I ever tell you about my wedding? A mate of mine.
I wasn't invited. Oh,
actually,
sorry.
A mate of mine who I think did you ever know Anthony Isaacs?
I think I know that. Yeah. Well, no. I think I'm thinking of someone else. The name seems familiar, but carry on.
I don't know, because he was at a radio station we were both at. I just wondered. But anyway, he works over in Norwich now, somewhere, Norfolk, somewhere.
Norfolk Digital.
But yeah,
with Alan Partridge.
But he plays the keyboard, plays the organ,
right.
And he played at our wedding. And I said to him, "Can you do me a favour when we go to sign the register? Can you play Heaven Knows I'm Miserable Now?" And he did.
Was it a joke, or you? Yeah. Knowing you meant it.
So we did. I said, "Can you learn it?" And he went, "Yeah, no problem." So we went off to sign the register on the church organ. Fabulous.
Well, a fabulous idea from you as well. So beautifully executed.
Made my day. I should be. Yes, I should be beautifully executed. Anyway, sorry. All Bar Luke, produced by Angel Eye Media. And written and performed by Tim Key and produced, as Adrian said, by Seb Barwell, is available, as Adrian also said, on Tim Key's website, timkey.co.uk.
But I didn't know about the Angel Eye Media because, on the radio, on Radio 4, it was just billed as effectively a BBC production. So there's obviously a more complex relationship.
I think it was, around that. Wasn't it about that time they were starting to go out to production companies, about 2006?
They would have been, yeah. Radio lagged TV, as it does in a number of things. Yeah. Anyway, talking of old lags, this one has got to set the homework. Is that my duty and privilege?
Yes, please. And I always love this part of the podcast because I never know. I can never second guess what you're going to do, which way you're going to go, what you're going to find for us. So what have you got for us for next week?
See, I don't want to... I've over-talked things in the past, or at least I've really liked them, and they've not sort of caught light with your good self. So I've got a hunch that you are going to like this. There's a hell of a lot more blue sky. There are some clouds, but the blue sky more than compensates. There are some... Well, I was listening to it briefly as I ran around tonight, and I was laughing out loud. It was just what I needed to de-stress. It is a BBC Radio 4 comedy, and we're not going to have the question, is it a comedy? I think you're at least going to acknowledge it's very much a comedy. It is Josh Howie's Losing It. Howie spelled Howie. Is this ring any bells, or have you heard of the gentleman?
I've never heard of Josh Howie.
Now, I've got my homework cut out to look into his career, but I believe Josh Howie is the name of a stand-up comedian. I don't think it's just a character within this show. But since I'm losing it, like the character, all bets are off on that one. But it's series 2. It hasn't, as we speak, you and I speak, we record, and then there's a bit of talking of lags, a time lag. But it's not quite gone out as we speak, but it will have done by the time this show goes up. But series 2, episode 6 of Josh Howie's Losing It. Essentially the setup, well, there's an added bonus, I think, for you. But if I find it funny, it's just possible you could find it even funnier, because it's about this funny guy who's having his first child with his partner, Monique.
Okay.
And I mean, it's a classic case of a guy floundering. I mean, the clue is in the title. He's losing it. He's not quite on top of fatherhood. I'm not saying that of you. Let me make that clear. But you are father to a young lad, and I think there'll be the comedy of identification there. But I found it perfectly entertaining. It's just the knots he gets himself into, and of course, in a classic comedy way, he makes it worse by trying to unknot one knot. He creates two knots where one was there before.
Okay.
And also, I mean, I was listening for a while. I just caught it randomly. Some of these gems I come up with, they're just happy accidents. I was in the car listening. You don't switch on necessarily at the beginning of a show. I was halfway through. It took me a while to realise there's a lot of Jewish humour in there. He's a Jewish character, but because I was laughing before I knew it was a Jewish character. I love Jewish humour, but you don't need to get Jewish humour, and you certainly, there was a title of a show years ago on BBC Radio London, you don't have to be Jewish, ... Inference being, or implication being, to enjoy the show. Well, yeah, it might help, but at the same time, you're welcome to enjoy it as well. It's very mainstream, very inclusive. I hope, and indeed pray, you enjoy it.
Do you know what, though? It doesn't matter if we don't, because we have more in common over comedy than we have apart. I think that's the interesting thing. And I've just realised something else that I do, that I think you do as well, is that I
talk too much.
Is that you don't breathe enough.
That's certainly true.
And I've done this in the past, and I'll continue to do this, and I'll encourage my son to do it as well. And that is to use comedy as a tonic. Because I think, if you're feeling down and you think, I'm going to listen to something, I'm going to watch something now, and I'm going to cheer myself up by watching something funny. I think that's one of the greatest things you can do. So it's quite, you saying, you were listening to it and it kind of cheered you up. And I think, that's the way it should be. That's how you should use comedy. Should be used as a tonic. But I like to say, I don't mind when we don't agree. I think it's great because I like to hear why you don't agree with what I think. And I know that you don't care what I think, and I think that's lovely. I
kind of care at one level, but I'm
kidding.
You make me sound like a complete brute. Anyway, shall we wrap up on credits and social media and where to find us?
Yeah, I think so. Sorry, what did you say? Series 2, episode 1, by the way.
Episode 6. Keep up.
Series 2, episode 6. I have to write it down, otherwise I'll then send him an email in the week and go, what did you say?
Which one was it? You didn't say, did you? But it's possible. It's confusing because each show has got an episode title, and some of these slightly inconsistent, whereby one of them has a number and the others have got titles. So who knows? It may come up with or without a title.
All right.
But I'm guessing, I don't know for a fact, but I'm guessing it's a 6-part series as the last one, but I could be wrong on that.
Okay. If you've enjoyed this podcast, then we have enjoyed your company, and it's nice to see that people are catching on and listening and sharing and downloading and various bits and pieces. So thanks for that. We really do appreciate it. If you want to catch up with the other stuff, there's loads of places you can catch up, aren't there, Adrian?
There are indeed. We are on Stitcher, Spreaker, iHeart Radio, YouTube. or should I say the YouTube. Thank you, Rob Brydon and Uncle Bryn as ever. And I've forgotten one. Spotify, thank you. That was the one I knew I'd forgotten something, but couldn't remember which one. That's not bad going for a man under the cosh. And would you want to do social medias? I briefly mentioned the twits earlier.
Yeah,
Thank you, Mark
basically,
Riley.
it's no more complicated than Comedy Slab, is it? And we're on Facebook and we're on Twitter as well. If you give us a follow, it'd be lovely to see who's listening. If you want to send us a tweet and let us know what you thought of an episode, that's lovely as well. You can comment on the YouTube version as well. So there's loads of ways that you can interact.
Indeed, there's no excuse not to. And part of the interaction could be you might want to suggest a show for us to slabadize and see who salutes.
Until the next time then, until we come back and review Josh Howie is Losing It, Series 2, Episode 6, which I'm looking forward to already. We'll say goodbye and thanks for being with us. Although he is a funny texture, isn't he? I can't help but notice.
But I see you're your normal colour of light grey, Shane.